friends, this topic about the feel of the Wahda Kabira, and how you can play it in 4/4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 9, meaning like you can extend it, but still you have a feel of one dum and two texts distributed in a certain way to sound like Wahda Kabira in particular. And that's a dynamic that you can adapt to after being able to understand the original beats. The original beats, they mostly have two dums in them. Dum on one and dum somewhere in the middle to identify the shape of it and the name. And then it helps to make a stronger structure for singing and things like that. Around this dynamic, once you figure that out, you'll start seeing how you can just have one dum on one and then extend your imagination and playing into higher numbers, not just four. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So from this speed, I'm playing the Wahda Kabira. If I put an extra note at the end and from the same speed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see, just being able to feel the space. So you're not counting patterns like Thuraya or Dor Hindi or things. No, you're just counting numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 3, 4, 5. That's again, I'm trying to get get used to the count itself within that feel rather than just getting used to the beat. It's easier to get used to the pattern. Once you learn it, you memorize it, becomes easy to work with. But to break around that and use that dynamic within playing the music, that's something to get to experiment with and see how can you get into that mind space that you can expand your horizon by taking that extra drum in the middle in any of those beats. I hope you see my point. Okay, so let me keep demonstrating and like we did the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see, instead of being dum rak dum rak as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see the point? 6. So the dum there again helps you grasp that slow number. For the 7, you can do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. See, that's the idea behind it. Now for the 7, for example, and I said earlier about the speed that you're playing in. This is a slower counting, if you notice, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1. But if you count double time, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just to imitate the feel of the Wahda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. You see my point? So where you prepare yourself and get very much familiar with the count itself and the length of it, What else? Of course I'm gonna skip the 8 because we already have the Wahda Tawila. It's a longer count. It's 8 count, so it's a Wahda, but that's why we call it Wahda Tawila, because it's already there. Now, those things I'm trying to discuss, they're not set already, the traditional beats, as much as they're dynamic and tools you can use within the tradition. You can play these things on top of what you already play, and I will demonstrate that. Okay, so for the 9, same thing. You have to choose the speed that you do it from. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Boom, you see? You still portray that feel of the Wahda or the accent of the Wahda, and then you do it in that different count. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see the point? It's really great, because again, it just takes you out of that mold that you have to play the beats the whole time the same way. I mean, it's good that you do this, but to make more dynamic in the music, make it even more refined by finding those things. Like, where can I apply these things? Of course, you can't do them just like that, but it adds to your wisdom where to use these kind of dynamics in the music instead of just playing like one repetitive style of playing or pattern, So that's one thing. Okay, I'm gonna demonstrate those dynamics with you side to side with the traditional beats that we know in different counts. I will count them and work them out and show you how when you play it with the original concept with the two dooms thing, or when it's done with one doom. Okay, so the Wahda, of course, it has one doom always. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we'll go to the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see how now you have more. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. You see? Then 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 9/8. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You see the idea? Okay. So I hope that was clear enough. And again, just a dynamic you can use. You can have fun with it in the music and. To add to your knowledge, as usual. Okay, so that's one thing. This topic is going to be about grouping and combining beats. There are a few beats I would like to discuss about this idea. What I mean by this, individual beats like Saidi, let's say, the 7/8, and you'll see this dynamic in the 7/8, and the 9/8. Those three, when you play them in a certain way, you can combine every two measures together instead of just playing them separate beats. And there are two things again. There's grouping and there's the combining. Grouping is when you have like a latching movement happens on the second pattern. You see my point? I'm gonna go from the 9. Let me start explaining by the 9/8. So this pattern of the 9 from the Roma tradition. You see, I played individually the beats, they sound the same. Now, and it's a simple thing that you add there in the second pattern to make this combination. So it becomes like this. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2. You see just those two extra texts that are highlighted. So you see how it's giving you almost like an illusion that those two things are together now. Instead of just playing them straight one by one, which is fine, you can do that. But this extra thing that you do there, it always has this nice impression that, yeah, it just combined the 2 meters together. And even it reflects on melody musicians. If they hear that, they can extend their phrases. Like, wow, yeah, I can feel the 2 9s now. So that's a nice dynamic to understand about this beat. The other one about combining things together happens in the 7/8, for example, and in the Saidi, those two things. And you will see, like, for example, the 7/8, if we play this 7/8. Individual 7s. This is what you can do to open it, becomes like a 14 count. So you created a pattern out of a longer count. Now there are two sevens and they're done this way. That again reflects in the phrasing. Like if you hear your melody musician guy playing a phrase that sounded long, when he repeats it again, you know that, oh yeah, I don't have to stick to dum ta dum tak dum ta tak tak. No, I can go along with him and then come back, you know, without losing my track. So that's a nice dynamic, and you can always come back to the main beat. And if you play this way or the other way, just with one dum under the text, you know, it's a little bit slower. But if you play it faster, became a repeating pattern that you can count on and hearing it. And again, you just using it like a dynamic within a taqsim. If someone doing a taqsim, instead of just holding the 7, you can just hold this more open 7, and it gives more space for the taqsim, the improvisation. Okay, this is about the 7. So you saw how we deal with this. The last one is the masmoodi. No, I'm sorry, the Saidi beat. You know, the Saudi people with their tradition, they know how to combine both beats by doing this. You see how you skip the dum from the second measure? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, that's a really nice dynamic to learn, and you will hear that in many different recordings of Egyptian music, whether it's dance music or just listening Saidi music. They have this nice way of, you know, just combining the two beats together. And again, same thing happens with the 7. You can do that. Not much with the 9s and other longer counts. If you can do that, but still, you just have to be aware of how can you actually apply this within the playing. You know, I think anything over 9, the hearing becomes even harder to hear the dum coming. So you just resort to those shorter beats and that you already play and you already deal with, and again, see how you can apply this dynamic and understand it. And one topic about maintaining those feels. If you remember earlier, I said having the Wahda Kabira feel, the Maqsoom feel, and the Malfoof feel, and even there's just anything in 3/8 or 6/8, that feel of tripleting thing. It's always nice to be able to maintain them always when you play, like inside of you, inside your own playing, and you don't have to be so conscious of them, but be aware that you have this capability in switching fields. I noticed something about a relationship between the Malfoof in different forms and the Maqsoom Sari'a, for example. Like you can insert that within. You can even have a couple of drummers playing, one playing Malfoof at a certain speed and one doing Maqsoom Sari'a, or just going back and forth between the two beats. You notice that in older singing genres and some dance, but a lot of singing genres, where you can feel the overall of it is like Malfoof mainly, but within that you can hear some other drums cutting into a Maqsoom Sari'a feel, and I will demonstrate this. So if we have any speed of the Malfoof at this speed, that's so fast. You know, just for the Malfoof or Adani, or even just straight rumba. Okay, so within this you can see where you can insert the Malfoof and the that helps you in playing to feel these things and have more dynamic again in the percussion section. You see my point? So it goes again back to the percussion section, being able to know their roles and knowing how to deal with those beats. Okay, same thing happens in the Maqsoom. Like if you play Maqsoom straight, but then sometimes you do these kind of tripleted syncopations with a Malfoof feeling, like helpful tips to know if you needed to use something interesting is by keeping those feels together. Even going down to Wahda Kabira feel also the same can be something you can practice. Try to go back between all of them. Wahda Kabira, Maqsoom, Malfoof, and the feeling of triplet, like being able to do the tripleted sound like over the Maqsoom. You see that feeling of triplet. And it also enforces your hearing and your feeling of the pulse. Okay, the same movement that we did, can be played on any of those beats as an ornament. Like sometimes you use it at the end of the beat, as you notice over the Maqsoom, for example. Now, if you do it within something like 9/8. That's another mental challenge in a very nice way to be able to feel not just the individual 9 beats, but rather even more. Remember we said earlier about combining beats and opening them together? This is another really great example to understand how we can feel all the way 2 measures, not just one. Like, it's kind of easy to feel sometimes 1 measure at a time, but 2 measures or more becomes a little bit focused. So you have to really get into it. I'll just demonstrate with this idea on the Roma 9. 1, it takes attention. When you have backup drums, it's awesome. It's easier to hear, and then the way it matches with the beat, it's beautiful because you hear the other drums hitting their dum, but yet there's this syncopation keeps flying all the way to the end of the second measure. These are really some of the beautiful marks of those traditions, like in the Turkish music and Arabic music, how the over unisons, when you play over unisons, it sounds this way. Again with those syncopations. Okay, well, I think this is for this topic. Thank you.